Hello literature lovers! Today we are doing something a little bit different. H.P. Lovecraft is known for his stories about cosmic horror and existential dread that describe things beyond human imagination, but maybe not beyond artificial intelligence imagination. So please enjoy the first part of this story, written by Lovecraft and his friend Duane Rimmel and illustrated by the DallE Open AI. I present to you The Tree on the Hill. The story is better than the title, I promise you. Southeast of Hampton, near the tortuous Salmon Ridge Gorge, is a range of steep rocky hills which have defied all efforts of sturdy homesteaders. The canyons are too deep and the slopes too hazardous to encourage anything except for seasonal livestock grazing. The last time I visited Hampton, the region, known as Hell's Acres, was part of the Blue Mountain Forage Reserve. There are no roads linking this inaccessible locality with the outside world, and the hill folk will tell you that it is indeed a spot transplanted from His Satanic Majesty's front yard. There is a local superstition that the area is haunted, but by what or by whom no one seems to know. Natives will not venture within its mysterious depths, for they believe the stories handed down to them by the Nez Perce, who have shunned the region for untold generations, because, according to them, it is a playground of certain giant devils from the outside. These suggestive tales made me very curious. My first excursion, and my last, thank God, into those hills occurred while Constantine Tunis and I were living in Hampton in the summer of 1938. He was writing a treatise on Egyptian mythology, and I found myself alone much of the time, despite the fact that we shared a modest cabin on Bacon Street, within sight of the infamous Pirate House, built by Exeter Jones over 60 years ago. The morning of June 23rd found me walking into those oddly shaped hills, which had, since 7 o'clock, seemed very ordinary indeed. I must have been about 7 miles north of Hampton before I noticed anything unusual. I was climbing a grassy ridge overlooking a particularly deep canyon, when I came upon an area totally devoid of the usual bunch grass and greaseweed. It extended southward, over numerous hills and valleys. At first I thought the spot had been burned over the previous fall, but upon examining the turf, I found no signs of a blaze. The nearby slopes and ravines looked terribly scarred and seared, as if some giant torch had blasted them, wiping away all vegetation. And yet there was no evidence of fire. I moved on over the rich black soil in which no grass flourished. As I headed for the approximate center of this desolate area, I began to notice a strange silence. There were no larks, no rabbits, and even the insects seemed to have deserted the place. I gained the summit of a lofty knoll and tried to guess at the size of that bleak, inexplicable region. Then I saw the lone tree. It stood on a hill somewhat higher than its companions, and attracted the eye because it was so utterly unexpected. I had seen no trees for miles. Thorn and hackberry bushes cluttered in the shallower ravines, but there had been no mature trees. Strange to find one standing on the crest of a hill. I crossed 2 steep canyons before I came to it, and a surprise awaited me. It was not a pine tree, nor a fir tree, nor a hackberry tree. I had never, in all my life, seen one to compare it with, and I never have to this day, for which I am eternally thankful. More than anything, it resembled an oak. It had a huge, twisted trunk, fully a yard in diameter, and the large limbs began spreading outward, scarcely 7 feet from the ground. The leaves were round, and curiously alike in size and design. It might have been a tree painted on a canvas, but I will swear that it was real. I shall always know that it was real, despite what Tunis later said. I recall that I glanced at the sun and judged the time to be about 10 o'clock a.m., although I did not look at my watch. The day was becoming warm, and I sat for a while in the welcoming shade of the huge tree. Then I regarded the rank grass that flourished beneath it. Another singular phenomenon when I remember the bleak terrain through which I had passed. A wild maze of hills, ravines and bluffs hemmed me in on all sides, although the rise on which I sat was rather higher than any other within miles. I looked far to the east, and I jumped on my feet, startled and amazed. Shimmering through a blue haze of distance were the Bitterroot Mountains. There is no other range of snow-capped peaks within 300 miles of Hampton, and I knew, at this altitude, that I shouldn't be able to see them at all. For several minutes I gazed at the marvel, then I became drowsy. I lay in the rank grass, beneath the tree. I unstrapped my camera, took off my hat, and relaxed, staring skyward through the green leaves. I closed my eyes. Then a curious phenomenon began to assail me, a vague, cloudy sort of vision, glimpsing or daydreaming seemingly without relevance to anything familiar. I thought I saw a great temple by a sea of ooze, where 3 suns gleamed in a pale red sky. The vast tomb or temple was an anomalous color, a nameless blue-violet shade. Large beasts flew in the cloudy sky, and I seemed to hear the pounding of their scaly wings. I went nearer the stone temple, and a huge doorway loomed in front of me. Within that portal were swirling shadows that seemed to dart and leer and try to snatch me inside that awful darkness. I thought I saw 3 flaming eyes in the shifting void of that doorway, and I screamed with mortal fear. In that noisome depth, I knew, lurked utter destruction, a living hell even worse than death. I screamed again. The vision faded. I saw the round leaves and the same earthly sky. I struggled to rise. I was trembling. Cold perspiration beaded my brow. I had a mad impulse to flee, run insanely from that sinister tree on the hill. But I checked the absurd intuition and sat down, trying to collect my senses. Never had I dreamed anything so realistic, so horrifying. What had caused the vision? I'd been reading several of Tunis' tomes on ancient Egypt. I mopped my forehead and decided that it was time for lunch. But I did not feel like eating. Then I had an inspiration. I would take a few snapshots of the tree for Tunis. They might shock him out of his habitual air of unconcern. Perhaps I would tell him about the dream. Opening my camera, I took 6 shots of the tree. Also, I included one of the gleaming snow-crested peaks. I might want to return, and these photos would help. Folding the camera, I returned to my cushion of soft grass. Had the spot beneath the tree a certain alien enchantment? I know that I was reluctant to leave it. I gazed upward at the curious round leaves. I closed my eyes. A breeze stirred the branches, and a whispered music lulled me into tranquil oblivion. And suddenly I saw again the pale red sky and the 3 suns, the land of the 3 shadows. Again the great temple came into view. I seemed to be floating on the air, a disembodied spirit, and exploring the wonders of a mad, multi-dimensional world. The temple's oddly angled cornices frightened me, and I knew that this place was one that no man on earth had ever seen in his wildest dreams. Again the vast doorway yawned before me, and I was sucked within that black, whirling cloud. I seemed to be staring at space unlimited. I saw a void beyond my vocabulary to describe, A dark, bottomless gulf, teeming with nameless shapes and entities, things of madness and delirium, as tenuous as a mist from Shabbalah. My soul shrank. I was terribly afraid. I screamed and screamed, and I felt that I would soon go mad. Then in my dream I ran and ran in a fever of utter terror, but I did not know what I was running from. I left that hideous temple and that hellish void, yet I knew I must, barring some miracle, return. At last my eyes flew open. I was not beneath a tree. I was sprawled on a rocky slope, my clothing torn and disordered. My hands were bleeding. I stood up, pain stabbing through me. I recognized the spot, the ridge where I had first seen the blasted area. I must have walked miles, unconscious. The tree was not in sight, and I was glad. Even the knees of my trousers were torn, as if I had crawled part of the way. I glanced at the sun. Late afternoon. Where had I been? I snatched out my watch. It had stopped at 10:34. If this was just a Lovecraftian story, we might leave our protagonist here. But given that this was a collaboration, this is not the end of our mystery tale. Keep an eye on this channel for part 2 with more madness and more AI-generated images. Turns out the real horror all along was the way AI creates human faces. If you like this video, don't forget to comment, like and subscribe, and perhaps I'll see you next time.